And a top story at this half hour, the National Health and Workers Union, NAHAO, has distanced itself from the death of a 6-month-old baby during their strike action. This comes after one of the 90 children who were moved from the Gauteng Department of Social Development's Child and Youth Care Centres died. The baby died yesterday after being removed from the Walter Sisulu Children's Centre and placed at a registered NGO. The children were moved on Friday as striking NAHAO workers barricaded entrances at the affected centres, barring essential supplies such as food, medication and laundry. The baby's death has sparked a blame game. NAHAO says the department knew as of the 10th of February about the strike, but Gauteng Social Development MEC Nandi Mayatula Khoza insists that all children were moved to registered non-governmental organizations. NAHAO further says the department was supposed to put measures in place to ensure such an incident doesn't happen. However, the MEC says striking workers barricaded all centers and the children who needed urgent medication couldn't access it. Finally, NAHAO says the blame can't be put squarely on the union, but the MEC blames NAHAO, saying caregivers were forced to join the strike, leaving children unattended.
We are told that there's such an unfortunate incident, and we are calling upon government to take a responsibility to account for what happened. And we also want government not to shift the ball coast and use the strike as a scapegoat in taking the responsibility to account. Remember that these facilities are a home away from home for these kids. So it means that the one responsible must also not take account of the social well-being, but also for their lives. So their life is been lost, and the government must account. Because there's a meeting convened by the employer at 10, with the hope that we will be able to resolve our issues today. But unfortunately, if the issues are not resolved, it's going to be a luta continua. We have made it from the onset that the only thing that will stop our strike is when the employer resolves issues favorable to members or to our demands. That's the only thing currently that will stop us.
Gauteng Social Development MEC Nandi Mayatula Khoza earlier briefed media on the NAHAO strike action. The MEC says all children were moved to registered NGOs as the department did not want another situation such as Life eSetimeni. She says Gauteng Premier David Makhura may be forced to request the assistance of the National Defence Force. And joining us on the phone is Mike Shingange, Deputy President of NAHAO. We have MEC of Social Development Nandi Mayatula Khoza, Gauteng Social Development MEC, and Professor Anne Skelton, Director for the Centre for Child Law. Good evening to you, MEC, and thanks so much for joining us. I mean, this is another debacle that social development can ill afford to have. We now have a situation of he says, she says, counter arguments. What is at the bottom of it all?
No, thank you very, very much, Cindy, for inviting us. I think we should start by saying condolences to the family of Singalaka, the 6-month-old baby who passed on yesterday morning at about 6:45. And we hope that the family will really, be consoled. And we hope that the child's spirit will rest in peace. Indeed, I mean, we are saddened by the death of Singalake, and the reason why we decided to move the children, not only Singalake, but I think it was about 12 children from Walter Sisulu, a child and youth care center, including the siblings, because Singalake came to Walter Sisulu in January, brought by the court. Apparently, the story we hear is that they lived in a condition, in a situation whereby it was harmful, they were not really protected, and the court brought them to Walter Sisulu, and they were taken good care of since January up until the 14th of March, when the department decided that the department should relocate and move the children to another safe house, because there were no care workers at Walter Sisulu. So there was 1 or 2 or 3.
And this is as a result of the strike and
yes,
the intimidation from NAHAO.
Absolutely. We were told by those workers themselves, they're saying, MEC, we want to go and work, but because we're intimidated, by comrades outside, they were barricading the entrances burning tires so that those workers who wanted to come in could not work. The care workers and some of the social workers, they were intimidated. There were blockages in spite of the court order, which was communicated to Nehawu leadership, and we believe it was also communicated to the members of Nehawu. So we had to save the children because there was no food for them, there was no medication, the laundry had not been done, there was a pile of dirty laundry. And therefore we had to do something as a department to really save lives. Unfortunately, the baby dies yesterday.
Mr. Shingange, Deputy President of Nehawu, the MEC essentially saying uSingalake's blood is on your hands because of the irresponsible conduct of your members, barricading entrances and denying access of critical medication for the children.
No, good evening, Cindy. That's very unfortunate for the minister, the MEC, to blame the workers when the workers are protesting for what is rightfully theirs. Our view is that, like we have said throughout the day and even yesterday, anybody that or any facility that there are patients that are supposed to be looked after has the responsibility to take care of. And taking care of the people that are under your care includes making sure that those workers that are responsible to make sure that the people are taken care of are also motivated and happy to work. From our understanding is that indeed casualties might arise as a result of workers downing tools because workers are very, very frustrated and the workers think that they cannot go on and work like that. So our view is that it is unfortunate and in fact it's uncalled for the MEC while they're still doing what they call postponement to determine the cause of death to already say to the public that the death is squarely on the blood of the union. We can say the same thing, that in fact the death is on the blood of the MEC and the department. Something that we did not want to do, something that we did not want to say, because this is a national strike. It's not a provincial strike. We don't understand the high...
All right, Mr. Shingange, just give MEC to respond. Please stay on the line. MEC?
I have repeatedly said on behalf of the Gauteng Department of Social Development that we respect the rights of the workers to protest. And when I spoke to them, because I spoke to the workers on Friday, where they allowed us to speak to them, and I said to them, I sympathize with you. I understand the cause of your strike, that one, you would like the reviewal of 2009 resolution on the salary entry levels, which are, of course, in the very, very low, I must say. They've told me, and I sympathize with them, and I really hope that indeed the negotiations will continue and review the salary levels so that they can get better salaries. Two, I also said I sympathize with you that you also want rural allowance. But what we are against, Cindy, is the violent nature of the protest. Because I went there, I went to about 8 of these child and youth care centers, and I could see the burning tires, or those that had burned already. I could see the gates were locked by the protesters. And yet the court order was saying, please protest, but be 100 meters away from the entrance. Do not intimidate other workers who want to go, and yet they were intimidated. Do not block the entrance.
It's even more insensitive on the part of Nehawu, and you can respond to this, that the death of baby Singalake could have been due to natural causes or any other circumstance besides the strike action preventing medication and caregivers from accessing the children. But we'll get back to that. We have a caller, Des in Randburg. Thanks so much for your call. Good evening to you.
Hi, Cindy. Thank you for taking my call. Cindy, I think the problem is goes far beyond just the incident of baby's death. We have been failed by our government to protect all civil society in the country. Our government is failing us in all aspects of protecting us.
Des, are you referring to the SASSA debacle, Life Esidimeni? I suppose we can group those together as part of your input.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks so much for calling. Des in Randburg saying generally there's a sense of a failure on the part of government. But just getting back to Mr. Shingange with regards to whether baby Singalake died of natural causes or any other condition is besides the point. The fact of the matter is that there was intimidation of caregivers not accessing the centres. The minister talks about barricades and the fact that medication and laundry was piled all over the place, making it conducive for further illness. So what is your response to that? That your members victimized and intimidated those who wanted to serve? Mr. Shingange?
Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah.
We want to say that we appreciate that the MEC seems to understand exactly the frustrations and the demand of workers. But it is one thing to say you support and you sympathize with them, but it's another thing to call for public sympathy to blame the striking workers. Because what the MEC has been doing throughout the day has been to appeal on the emotional roller coaster to emotionally blackmail the workers and get the public sympathy or almost to be against the workers. That's the first thing that we think it's an unfortunate. Look, we do not expect any caregiver who falls under the social development to be on duty at a time when there's a dispute that has been declared in the bargaining council and the strike has been declared by all the unions that are operating there.
But do you have the right to intimidate those that choose to go and work and provide an essential service to the most needy? Albeit that the strike is protected, but there are some of your members who wanted to serve, according to the MEC at least, and you prevented them. At least your members were very violent and hostile towards them.
We don't know any members of ours that our members have always been on the picket lines, because remember these are the workers who gave us a mandate to go and give a notice to the employer to strike. So we dispute the fact that there are any of our members who wanted to strike or to go to work and not go to strike. That has not been brought to our attention, including the cases of intimidation that has not been brought to us. We have, for now, we can dispute that and say that it's a question of intimidation. What we want to say to the public is that the strike notice was served according to the Labour Relations Act, which gave enough time for the employer to do what we call contingency plan. They could have avoided all this. That's the reason why a notice is given to any employer when there's a strike. That's
Mr. Shingange, I just want to get to the point where, as part of your protected strike to deny access to medication, at least a skeleton staff, including supplies like food and dealing with hygiene issues, was that part of your strike order?
No. Remember, one of the things that the employer did when they received the notice, they didn't come to us. Normally, when there is a notice to strike, there's a discussion and we agreed on what we call picketing rules. In this case, there were no picketing rules. Every time there is a dispute in the bargaining council and there is a strike notice and there's an agreement that we're going to have a protected and a legal strike, the two parties will come together and draft what we call a picketing rule in terms of the Labour Relations Act. What then the employer did, outside those discussions, they then went to court and throw us with the court interdict, something that there was no need for them to go to court because these matters are regulated by the Labour Relations Act. That's one. Two, there could not be a skeleton staff, as you're putting it, outside those discussions, outside the fact that the social development as yet, there's no what we call minimum service level agreement that we have with the department in those areas that sometimes will have been declared as essential services. So there will not have been any worker of ours who will have been willing to go to work outside agreed to picketing rules.
Mr. Shingange, please, we're very tight on time. Please hold on the line. Professor Anne Skelton, Director for the Centre of Child Law. Good evening to you and thanks so much for joining us. Where is the justice here for baby Singalake?
Well, we're very puzzled at the Centre for Child Law as to how this strike can be a legal one, because as far as we're concerned, work in a child and youth care centre is an essential service. It was declared so back in 2003, and so we're puzzled as to how this can be a legal strike.
All right, but also just learning from the Life Esidimeni crisis and the deaths of psychiatric patients, in your view on both sides of the union and social development, what could have been done better?
Look, as far as we're concerned, wherever children are being cared for and they're dependent on adults to care for them, that is an essential service. And in fact, there shouldn't have been a strike. That's our view. But once there was a strike, then obviously making sure that children are safe is an immediate priority. I know that the department is now moving children and has moved children to other places. But really, our question is whether or not the strike should have happened in the first place.
The line, Professor. MEC, just your response with regards to, number one, justice and also the allegations that you could have done more. You had from the 10th of February to have contingency measures in place.
We were informed about this national strike on the 10th of March, which is on Friday, that the strike was going to happen on the 13th of March. Yes, we were aware of the February strike, and we were aware that it was directed to National Department of Social Development and probably the Department of Public Service and Administration because of the nature of the demands of the workers. But given a weekend, the department, the head of department and the officials were able to put in place the contingency plans. But I can tell you when we visited these spaces, for example, in Itireleng, in Garangua, in Father Mangaliso Mkhatshwa, in Soshanguve, there was only one person, the head of institution alone, working alone to care for close to 100 children. They were crying left, right, and center because the care workers were barred from getting into the institution to go and do the work that they're expected to do. So what the leadership of NEHAWU is saying is not correct, to say that they wouldn't have allowed care workers because this is about social workers. We are saying there was one head of institution caring for 100 people.
Mr. Shingabe,
why were the care workers intimidated?
Yeah, caregivers couldn't go and access the centers, as the MEC is saying, and one could argue that this had then subsequently led to the unfortunate death of baby Singalake.
No, the first thing that we think the Ministry of Health and Social Development in Gauteng is doing, which is unfortunate, it is taking the responsibility of the national competency. Because there was no way we were going to inform the department on the 10th of March that the strike is starting on the 13th and that strike will be deemed legal and protected. That's when we say the death of any casualty that arise as a result of the strike is at the square at the door of the department. We don't mean the department as herself, we mean the department in entirety because the strike had to comply with a certain time frame. And the time frame could not have been the 10th, which was on a Friday, and then the strike starting on Monday. You understand? So it is not our fault that the department, having been informed in time, in compliance with the Labour Relations Act and the prescript of the strike,
no, but I want to go back to your members barring or barricading entrances where caregivers couldn't go and work. But let's take a caller, Felix in Nelspruit. Please stay on the line, Mr. Shingange. Hi, Felix. Good evening.
Thank you, Cindy, for taking my call.
You're welcome.
Yes, I think we must always look at it this way. Before a strike happens, there must have been a disagreement between the employer and the employee. There must have been a point in which the employer is telling the employee that, look, I cannot listen to you anymore, or I'm not going to accede to your demand. So there's a breakdown relationship. And the employer must have known that if the employee withdraw its service, there will be problems. And now, why should now the employer now start blaming the employee for the problem that is arising? And that's what everybody must look at. The employer must squarely take the blame for this.
All right, thanks so much, Felix. We'll get the MEC to respond. Mel in the Eastern Cape, good evening to you.
Hello.
Hi, Mel. Good evening.
Hi.
Well,
good evening. Yes, ma'am. You are speaking to a social worker, ne?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm calling on this issue of social workers and how. So I just want to remind the department that we are not massaging them. We are striking for our demand that has been on table for many years. The department knows. And we're not expecting the MEC of Gauteng or KZN to speak about this. We're expecting the MEC, Mamuba Tablet, to speak on behalf of this. We are concerned because if there wasn't passing of this baby, what should have been happening? There should be silence from them. We are hearing from them now only because there is this issue of this past baby. I am also sending my condolences to the child. Then we want to remind the department that our demands are still stand there. We want our salary levels, decent salary is equal to decent job.
I understand that your grievances are legitimate, but as a service provider, especially to the most vulnerable, just from a moral, ethical point of view, are your demands at all costs, and in this case it led to the death of baby Singalake, are you satisfied now that you've made your point, and also in retrospect, was the strike conducted in a responsible manner?
No, not that, ma'am. I just want to let everyone know that we are in sympathy with the passing of Singalake, but the problem is that the department is not taking care of us social workers. The department has denied us many times resolutions like OSD hasn't been implemented, and if it's implemented, the process is that there are task teams that are implementing our OSD thing. Then the task team is always the implementation is always the filing is being done, and we want even to know the formula of calculating OSD per se.
All right, we'll get to the nitty-gritties. Thanks so much for your call. Professor Skelton, just in terms of observing the rights of children, particularly when their relations have severed between employer and employee, you say that it's an essential service, but of course the NEHAWU members feeling that they've been frustrated over years, and this had simply had to come to pass. So where do we put the children in the picture?
Well, the point is that if a service is an essential service, it doesn't matter how frustrated the workers may be feeling. They cannot use strike as a way of dealing with their grievances. So we want to keep coming back to that point that it seems as though it's not known that work that is done in a child and youth care centre is supposed to be an essential service and that there shouldn't be strikes. Of course, if there is a strike, then if you're going to be taking this kind of action where children are concerned, the safety of the children must come first. It's obvious that they need to be cared for and that special arrangements need to be made. And I think that means that the way that one organises the strike also has to be thought through. But as I said, I keep coming back to the fact that this actually is an essential service. I'm not expressing an opinion, I'm actually stating the law.
Right, Professor Anne Skelton, Director for the Centre of Child Law, saying that this is an essential service. The protection of the strike should not have been granted. But where do we go now? There's this ping-pong kind of attitude between the department and NEHAWU with very little answers. MEC, if you can maybe clarify, you can't absolve yourself of any responsibility. One could say you could have done better. There's always room for improvement, but NEHAWU was adamant that this squarely lies with the National Department of Social Development.
Yes. I agree with Professor. I think I need to make that point, that indeed these are essential services. And something could have gone wrong at the negotiating table probably, and I think in future this must be done better, so that indeed, as the Professor is saying, there should be a meeting between the leaders of NEHAWU and the department and government to really, look at these issues of essential services, so that really there shouldn't be a strike where we are providing essential services. What we were doing, we are not taking over the responsibility of National Department of Social Development. We were reacting to the fact that indeed the safety of our children come first. The safety of the vulnerable groups of people come first. The elderly, the frail elderly, the people with disabilities. We were reacting to the violent situation, and hence we did what we did. But going forward, we continue to look at how we can ensure that the children are safe, get them into spaces that are safe, and we continue to work with the health department to ensure that there should be no diseases in spaces where cleaning has not actually taken place. We have spoken to the police commissioner, who through the MEC has actually committed that there will be more police, order to keep order in our streets of Gauteng and Johannesburg.